Welcome, everyone. What a powerful way to begin our program with Dr. King's voice in the room. This year, the theme for this celebration event, Quest for the Bread of Love, Radical Community Care, is based on Dr. King's 1967 speech, A Knock at Midnight, where he just told us, when you stop hoping, you're dying. In the midst of this hopelessness, men and women reach out for the bread of hope. Then that is the quest for the bread of love. Everyone needs this bread. I'm Katrina Moore, the Senior Director of the Africana Center here at Tufts. And with this program, we aim to move us from a widely accepted depiction of the I Have a Dream, Dr. King, and Day of Volunteer Service celebrations to a deep examination of our righteous anger with how our current state of affairs in the United States are dismantling many of the gains of the civil rights movement in an attempt to move us to a sense of hopelessness and despair. Yes, I'm angry, and you should be too. But I'm reminded of Congressman John Lewis's visit to Tufts in 2016, when he said, to change America, to make it better, we must make ourselves better. We have to humanize our institutions, humanize ourselves. He left us with the charge to never stop, never give up the fight, to turn our anger into action. Now is the time to turn our anger into action. So in this year's event, we hope to orient the Tufts community to both Dr. King and Coretta Scott King's commitment to deep care of one another, ourselves, and our communities. We will hear from local activists and Tufts student leaders who will consider how their labor, rest, and play connect to care, and to reflect on the King's legacy and bring us together as a community to deepen our understanding of the radical work of the Kings and to continue to shape Tufts into a place of true belonging, equity, and care. Dr. King and Coretta Scott King challenged us with their voices, their hearts, and their hands. Through this program, participants and our presence today, let us be reminded to remain steadfast to this challenge and believe that we will one day fulfill the mission and goal of equity, compassion, and peace for all mankind. Welcome to our MLK celebration event. And now it is my pleasure to introduce President Anthony Monaco to give us welcoming remarks. President Monaco, we thank you for your support of today's program, which ensures that we are able to continue this longstanding Tufts tradition and gives the Tufts community the opportunity to express ourselves and provide reflection on the life and legacy of the man and the movement that not only changed civil rights laws for all Americans, but set in motion the drive for human rights reform worldwide. President Monaco.
Thank you, Katrina. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to join you in our annual celebration of the life and legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. This event serves as an opportunity for us to come together as a community to reflect and to recommit ourselves to Dr. King's vision for a more equitable world. The theme of this year's symposium is Quest for the Bread of Love, radical community care, based on Dr. King's 1967 sermon, A Knock at Midnight. In the sermon, Dr. King talks about the midnight that exists in our world and prompts us to seek the bread of love. I think we can find many examples of midnight in our present day. A global pandemic and the many existing inequalities it brought to light. Acts of hate, violence, and bigotry across our country. Divisive politics and voter suppression laws that attempt to undermine our democracy. Doubting the expertise, when we needed it most, of those who have spent a lifetime mastering the knowledge, skill, and competence that made them experts in their field. All of these things threaten to sow division in our society. But amidst hardship and adversity, Dr. King tells us that we must seek to preserve and create community. Only then we can succeed in our quest for justice and equality. While we seek to make the wider world a better place, we must also acknowledge the relevance of Dr. King's words to life locally in our own university community. In many ways, this quest for the bread of love mirrors our own commitment to become an anti-racist institution, and our efforts to make Tufts a place of genuine belonging, equity, and care. While we have made much progress as a university, I recognize there's still much work to be done. I look forward to continuing the conversations and collaborations that will help make our university more just and equitable, and ultimately bring us closer to achieving Dr. King's vision of the beloved community. In addition to honoring the legacy of Dr. King, this event serves as a moment to acknowledge and celebrate the legacy of the Black and African American experience in our country. Last year, the Africana Center reframed Black History Month in February to Black Legacy Month. This was done from a desire to connect the past to the present and to create the foundation that will ultimately inspire future generations of Black leaders. As this year's Black Legacy Month, I'm especially excited about Leading While Black, which will honor the legacy of Black leaders who made a significant impact on our university, and a project that my office is proud to support. This event will include conversations on February 19th with 8 of these transformational leaders, as well as a multimedia archival exhibit located at the Tisch Library and another exhibit within the newly renovated Coolidge Room in Ballou Hall. I encourage you all to view these conversations, which will be made available online, and please visit the exhibit. Before we transition to the next portion of the event, I'd like to take a moment to thank colleagues from the Africana Center, the University Chaplaincy, the Provost Office, the Tisch College of Civic Life, and the Department of Studies in Race, Colonialism, and Diaspora for organizing this wonderful program. And thank you also to our student speakers, Amma Agyei, René, LaPointe, Jameson, and to our panelists, Makeeba McCreary and Imari Jeffries, for sharing your expertise and perspectives on this meaningful occasion. It's now my pleasure to turn it over to Essence for a musical performance. Thank you.
Hey! We are the ladies of Essence, an all-women identifying a cappella group that specializes in songs of the Africana diaspora. I am co-president Jenna Gabby.
And I'm the other co-president Isabel Charles, and we're very thrilled to be performing for the Quest for the Bread of Love.
We have a couple of song selections for you guys, and we hope you enjoy.
Thank you.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and
Thank you so much, Essence. I was, every time I hear that song, it's very beautiful. And I always get so happy that I teach at Tufts and have such wonderful students that I can interact with who are so talented and good. So thank you so much. Thank you, President Monaco. Thank you, Katrina. Thank you for the Chaplaincy's office, and thank you everybody for coming. My name is Carrie Greenidge. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Studies in Race, Colonialism, and Diaspora, and I will introduce our wonderful panel this evening and this afternoon, and then open it up for questions. So I will introduce each of them. I'm very excited they're all here. Imari Jeffries is the executive director at King Boston and the senior advisor to the president and CEO. In June 2020, Imari Jeffries was named executive director of King Boston, where he is leading a citywide racial equity transformation through the Embrace Memorial, the Center for Economic Justice, and community organizing efforts. Imari brings a wealth of experience from the nonprofit management, racial equity, community activism, education reform, and social justice sectors, and has served in executive roles at Parenting Journey, Jumpstart Boston Rising, and Friends of the Children. He currently serves as a trustee of the UMass System, Mass Humanities, Mass Budget Policy Center, the United South End Settlement Houses, and Governor Baker's Black Advisory Commission. I'm very happy he's here. I don't think I've met you in person, so I'm very happy you're here, and I've heard you've done a wonderful thing. I'll go through and introduce everybody, and then we can open it up. We then have Dr. Makeeba McCreary, our newest member here at Tufts. So glad that you are here. Dr. McCreary is president of the new Commonwealth Racial Equity, pardon me, this is craziness. Racial Equity and Social Justice Fund, NCF, she was appointed in September 2021. NCF is a coalition founded of Black and Brown executives from Massachusetts leading corporations united to support Black and Brown communities amid the COVID-19 pandemic and in the wake of the brutal killing by police of George Floyd. In its first year, NCF raised $30 million, which we could all clap, $30 million towards its initial fundraising goal of $100 million, which will be used to support eligible nonprofit organizations and to build an ecosystem of area leaders and stakeholders committed to dismantling systemic racism in Boston and across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Makeeba joins NCF after 2.5 years with the Museum of Fine Arts. In her role, she focused on audience development and integrating diverse perspectives through the lens of art. Prior to joining the MFA, Makeeba served as the managing director and senior advisor of external affairs for Boston Public Schools, reporting directly to the mayor and superintendent of schools. And she held several positions in philanthropic focused nonprofits and corporations before working for the city of Boston. Thank you so much, Dr. McCreary, for coming and joining us. And then we have Amma Agyei. Again, the reason why I love Tufts, our talented and wonderful students. Agyei is a current undergraduate student majoring in biomedical engineering. Amma has served many roles on campus, including Africana Community Senator, Black Student Union President, Africana Center Peer Leader, Teaching Assistant, and Squad Pre-Orientation Coordinator. Amma currently represents the entire Tufts undergraduate student population as the TCU President. As TCU President, Amma is responsible for meeting with Tufts administrators to discuss student concerns and improve student life, allocating a $2 million budget to over 300 students, organizations, and managing all TCU senators. Thank you so much for being here. Again, wonderful students. I get so proud of them. So pardon. And then we have René LaPointe Jameson. She is a senior Balfour Scholar and Tisch Scholar at Tufts University. She uses engineering as a tool for social justice. She is passionate about environmental justice and health equity. René studies environmental engineering with a self-designed focus on race and justice. René has been community organizing since she was 14. She mobilized dozens of her peers to build and revitalize gardens, support banning single-use plastic bags in her town, create care packages for homeless shelters, and more. Today, René is the Food Justice Projects Coordinator at nonprofit building Audacity. She coordinates a food distribution program that serves 650 plus families impacted by food apartheid in Greater Boston. As part of her food justice work, René co-directs the design and development of a community hydroponics center, for which she co-earned a $20,000 plus grant to fully fund the project. In 2021, René received the Tufts University Presidential Award for Civic Life. So I'm so happy to have all of you here. I'm so happy to talk to you all. I always say, I've been saying all day, this is my favorite part of working at Tufts, being able to talk to people and see our wonderful students here. So thank you for being here. All right, so I wanted to sort of gear our questions to you, and then you can riff off, you can talk as long as you want, time permitting, in here. But Katrina very eloquently was posing this question of care and this idea of people feeling this rage at this particular moment, which I think is well felt by all of us here. And so I want to get into why we're here today, which is Martin Luther King, but also ask how each of you see King's work reflected in your own work, given that all of you are doing amazing work within your communities, doing amazing work in terms of linking your personal passions to kind of this beloved community, as King would call it. So what do you make of King's legacy, given how it affects your own work? And anyone can start. Dr. McCreary?
I was going to nominate Imari, but I guess.
I was going to do this.
I think a lot about this point in my career. I've had lots of opportunities to lead and be led. And when the moment came for an invitation to join New Commonwealth Fund as the first president, it just felt like the absolutely perfect time in my personal, and I'm glad you said, personally and professionally, because it was as much of a personal decision as I've ever had to make for something professional. And what I mean by that is, I think that a lot of my other choices have been driven more by the opportunity, the institutional presence, the work that could be done. But this was just a moment in my life where I said, I have done so much work for my white allies and my white allied organizations over my career, to help them identify all of the really important ways that diversity, equity, inclusion should be amplified. And never have I had the chance to put that aside, right? And say, I'm actually going to spend the next part of my career working with Black and Brown leaders, finding ways to make sure that they are financially resourced to the end of solving this very real issue, which is, something that we all five of us experience on a daily basis, almost to the point where, I can speak for myself, I suppose, that, you really do have to stop and acknowledge how much racism persists in each of the policies, the programs, the different experiences, practices that we experience on a daily basis. And so, I also have never had the opportunity to work with 19 Black and Brown leaders who founded NCF. And that's also a perfect point in my career to do that, to say, I'm going to work with my people. I'm going to work for my people. I'm going to have a chance to just be completely embedded in my own community. And there's value on both sides, but this for me was really the moment to celebrate that.
Thank you so much. Well, we'll come back to this. I have more questions, and thank you for your words. Imari, would you like to?
Yeah, I think given the opportunity to run an organization that is building a monument for Dr. and Mrs. King, it is embedded in my life every day. And I find myself rolling over in my sleep, quoting Dr. King quotes, obscure ones that I didn't think I would need to remember, that are coming in handy. And I think something that Makeeba said resonated with me and resonates with this moment in time. In the 50s and 60s, Dr. King was public enemy number one, right? He was FBI. He was not a well-liked person, so much so that he would receive receive death threats, and ultimately succumb to an assassin's bullet. And so this opportunity, this moment in time is I feel like we're in a moment in time where the ideas, the conversations that we are having today, the work that we're doing today, was not popular in a way that we could elevate and amplify. This is the first time that I can recall a president accepting the office of the president and saying white supremacy in his acceptance speech. Right, we're in a different moment in time, in a way that history has transformed, and I think the legacy of Dr. King was ahead of its time, and it has taken over 50 years for our country to catch up to at least hear it. And I think also, as it resonates in my work, this idea of this work being a marathon and not a sprint, and we've all heard this before. But it's only been 22 years since the King holiday has been celebrated in all 50 states. It wasn't until the year 2000 that this was even a holiday, which all states, in some states it was known as Robert E. Lee and King Day, or Stonewall Jackson and King Day, and other ridiculous co-names to the holiday. And so I think the message of King is resonating in this moment in time. And some of this, I must admit, could be because of the pandemic and really the Mother Nature's force of us staying still enough to pay attention to something that's been happening to Black folks in this country for centuries. And so, it resonates with me. It resonates in my work. I feel fortunate to get to work virtually. Makeeba and I are virtually desks apart from each other. And so I feel fortunate to be in this moment in time with someone who I've gotten to do this work for a long, long time.
Thank you very much. Amma or René,
I
how
would
do you
love
see King's work reflected in your own work?
Yeah, I'm really glad Imari brought that up, because I've also been thinking a lot about how MLK was really hated during this time. His work was not popular. And today I think we get a sanitized, peacekeeping message that isn't always at the core of really the radical work he was doing. But I think it reminds me that the work I'm doing doesn't need to be in popular favor. It doesn't need to be widely liked to be valuable and to be important. I really see myself as someone that is challenging institutions and communities that I'm a part of to do better and to show up better for other folks, particularly those that are marginalized. And again, that's not always easy and that's not always supported. But I think that's what radical community care is really about. I think it's about accountability for institutions. And when we tell institutions this isn't how you need to step up, I think that's like the ultimate form of love. If you're someone telling another person, here are the ways in which you're harming me, or here are the ways in which I want you to do better, it means you're putting in the energy and the time and the effort to say, I think you can do better. I believe that you can step up to this standard. And I trust that we can talk about this and that you'll meet this expectation of mine. I think that's one of the greatest forms of love to show someone else. Mm-hmm. So when I'm thinking about radical community care, when I'm thinking about my work, I definitely feel, because of Dr. King's legacy, less afraid to host those hard conversations, to put forward high standards for one another, because I think that's the best way we can demonstrate love and step up to center those most marginalized in our communities.
Thank you very much.
I guess I can go.
Yes.
I would say all my life, I found myself being pushed towards certain things, certain positions, certain roles. And I find myself half of the time kind of stepping away from that because I didn't want to seem power hungry. But then I've just come to the realization that is what drives me. Doing things for others drives me. Putting myself in uncomfortable situations drives me and pushes me. When I first came to Tufts, I told myself I was going to just prioritize my major and myself, no leadership roles for me. But then after the first year, I realized that a part of me was missing. And I didn't have that passion. I didn't have that drive. And so then I picked up the mantle and I was like, this is who I am. And I'm going to continue to be in leadership roles. I'm going to continue to be a voice for other underrepresented populations. I'm going to voice out the needs and wants of the Black community. I am going to push for causes that may seem impossible, but I just believe, like, if there's a will, like, there's a way. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I wonder if, given what all of you are saying, and I liked what all of you are saying about how, you know, the way you're showing up for yourselves in a way, and yet you're not losing track of how yourself is being impacted by and impacts these systems that you're trying to change. I wonder if you could speak about how it is that you see King's legacy, given the moment that we're in, which is a moment where there's sort of an assault on voting rights, right? There's an assault on civil rights generally, and sort of how you see, what you see of that, given kind of the moment that they're in. And so you talked about this a little bit, Imari, which I liked what you were saying about, we're kind of in this moment where you have the tragedy of COVID, and yet you have a moment where people are forced to really slow down. But what do you see? What do you make of that legacy, given that we are kind of at this inflection point where, you know, we have voting rights under attack, we have, you know, all of these we're sort of in this moment in American history. How do you see that? How do you reflect on King's legacy given that?
You know, I think I'm glad you said King and you didn't say Martin Luther King, because I think part of the legacy, you know, in my work, we're building this memorial to Dr. and Mrs. King. In the photo, which is the inspiration for Dr. and Mrs. King, you know, they're hugging, they're embracing. Mrs. King's arms are underneath Dr. King's. Hank Willis Thomas, who's the sculptor, the artist who created the embrace, talks about what inspired him about this photo of Dr. and Mrs. King, and Mrs. King's arms being underneath in the hug and Dr. King's arms being on top, is that Mrs. King's arms are supporting Dr. King's weight. She is the anchor. She is literally the foundation of the movement. And I think part of the legacy in this moment in time is really the power of Black women being the foundation in the movement. And I'm so fortunate that we're also seeing Black women in not only the foundation of the movement, the face, and really in the leadership. And so part of the King's legacy and Mrs. King as a hidden figure of history is her leadership, and how their relationship wasn't a relationship of a husband and a dutifully church wife. One of the things that she wanted to do, or that they did in their vows, is take out the line to honor or obey. It was a partnership of mutuality and leadership. And so I think in this moment in time, you know, folks like Makeeba, folks like Congresswoman Presley, folks like Rachel Rollins, and seats folks like Michelle Wu, who's not Black, but women of color in leadership positions, Mrs. King being a role model. It was her who was really responsible after the death of Dr. King to ensure that the holiday even existed. Her tireless advocacy and energy and movement building to ensure that the holiday existed, not only to honor Dr. King as the man, but she knew that as a people, we needed continuous symbols, counter monuments, counter holidays, to interact the brainwashing of other things that had us believe that we were less than and didn't belong. And so I think that wisdom and that insight of her legacy as a King is a part of this moment in time. And I think I'm grateful we're seeing the emergence of Black women in leadership in the ways that we hadn't before.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I'd love to just call out language that Imari just used, which is tireless. And for me, what I really reflect on, I think about how many movements we've seen. I mean, Imari and I are probably similar generation, but you know, my parents were a part of the civil rights movement. My father's from Mobile, Alabama, and you know, I have a great grandmother who was a slave, and we have not too far gone from that moment in time. And I remember when Mr. Floyd was murdered, there was this sort of volume of silence, if I could put it that way, where I think that the emotion was just ballooning, at least in the Black community and in my community. And there was something that kept being said, which is, I'm so tired. I'm so tired of this. And I think what the Kings really left for us to be reminded of is that that is a luxury that we cannot afford. And I'm sure that they became exhausted, and I'm sure that they had moments where they wanted to, take a minute and just stop. And they didn't. They still continue to remind us that we can't allow this beautiful generation that's in front of us at the bottom of my screen to have that moment in time where they say, I am so tired. Like that's why we do this work, so that my son, doesn't have to wake up one morning and say, oh, again, so that's what I would offer.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Amma or René?
I couldn't help but get overwhelmed when, the reminder of our voter rights and our democracy is being threatened, and, women's bodily autonomy is also being threatened, and we're in a climate crisis. There's just so much going on. And the first thing that I was thinking about is, I just want to shout out all the Black, Indigenous, other students of color who are doing their best to learn during this time. I mean, I have like a air pollution control problem set to do after this. And at the same time, I'm supposed to learn how to liberate myself and my people. Let's just acknowledge that there's so much that is being done by students of color. So I just think that's something especially nice to plug. But I think I'm also thinking about how, in relation to Dr. King, I think his message on peace is often co-opted. And I think that today we do too much peacekeeping versus peacemaking. And I think a lot of the peacekeeping that goes on is about preserving the status quo and not disrupting systems too much. But that's kind of exactly what we need, especially because the status quo is so violent. It's violent against people of color. It's violence against low-income folks. It's violence against disabled folks, and so on. So I think that we need to really go back to Dr. King's quotes that talk about how if a system isn't serving you, it's time to do more than just change the system. It's time to radically disrupt and restart, rebuild new things. And because I don't think this is of service of us anymore, and it never was supposed to be. So grappling with that, I think is difficult and can really be overwhelming. But I think part of it is trying to find that luxury to rest, trying to recenter ourselves and our goals in this. And again, trying to build peace, which will sometimes involve really, again, uncomfortable situations, unpopular work to get to a better society.
Wonderful. I like the way you said that, students having to learn at the same time that they're sort of looking at ways for liberation. So thank you so much. Any last words?
I guess the last words I would like to add is I just find it kind of ironic how Dr. King's quotes for all over social media, news outlets, but people are still not recognizing the fact that the blocking of the voting rights bill is just demonstrating how the United States is moving backwards. You're posting all these quotes and posting all these pictures, but then you're not realizing that there's a threat to democracy. You're not realizing that voter suppression is happening. And yeah, that's just what I want to add.
Thank you so much. Well, I think I'm looking towards our moderators, who I think are telling me that I'm I'm talking too much or going on too long. Is that the case? Or I think we can open it up for questions from the audience, who would want to ask our wonderful panelists what they would like. I have many questions I would still like to ask you guys, but I will open it up for people who have questions for our guests.
I have a question. I could do some time killing.
Yes.
Just thinking about your work on Trotter, thinking about the lost legacies of the Kings in Boston. How would you describe this moment? I know that your work around the memorializing the Black Heritage Trail is a part of this larger conversation around space and people of color, the erasure of our spaces. How would you describe this moment, both in higher education campuses, but also in communities, in a city as Boston, historic as Boston is?
Oh, that's a interesting question. See, every time I love these events because I'm always like, oh, I can like sit back, and then it's like, oh, now you're making me answer some questions and think. But thank you so much. I think that Boston has this long history of being a place that is of contradictions, right? I say this a lot, right? So you have King here and you have Malcolm X here, who argue the city is formative to how they view their politics. And yet they're both here at a time when Boston was sort of declining in terms of its racial professions about itself. But I think that I get a lot of comfort and a lot of optimism from students, because I do think that this rising generation has grown up through all these crises. And I just know as a historian that often when you have groups of students who are forced to do that, right? They have economic collapse, they have COVID, they have, the rise of economic inequality, they have climate change, right? All those things. There's really an opportunity historically for that generation to take the helm. And so I think, Dr. McCreary, when you were saying, looking at this new generation, I get a lot of joy out of seeing younger people, because I think that when people are in that much of crisis, right, there is an opportunity, as sad as it is, for really radical change to come. I think in terms of place, I really see students and see younger people embracing the diversity of their spaces, right? And the fact that they can exist as a student at Tufts elite university, and they can be doing work on climate change, right? And they can be going to school at Harvard and studying to be an engineer, and they can be inhabiting this space where they're dealing with hunger and housing insecurity. So I get a lot of optimism from that. I hope that means that different avenues will be taken, like Trotter took, that seem outside the realm of the possibilities that we think of now, and a younger generation saying that there's actually a better way to do it. So it's a good question. Actually, these things always make me think. So thank you for the question.
We had you on the hook as the moderator, and we switched it up a little bit.
Exactly.
Give us some time for the Q&A.
Yes, I'll do some time for Q&A. Why don't we say, I have a question here where somebody says, this work is indeed a marathon. Panelists, what are some ways that you all incorporate rest and play while on this long journey of being in this marathon? So what do you personally do for rest and play? I know I have a 2-year-old niece who gives me a run for my money all the time, lives with me, and whoo, she's a mess, but she's a beautiful mess. So that's kind of my rest. And I'm not the parent, so I didn't have the luxury of spoiling her and walking away and watching the craziness. But rest and play, what are sort of as you're on this journey, what are your forms of rest and play?
I like to craft. I like to knit. Tufts has a really awesome craft center that is like a free resource for students that has lots of wonderful materials for people to make whatever their heart desires. And I think that's a really great community resource for people to get to know each other. And again, share some creativity, and more communities should have. So, yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else?
I like to paint and like cry sometimes. It's okay to cry and just eat ice cream.
Ice cream is good. Yes.
I love that. It's such an important question to ask yourself often so that you can recognize if you don't do it enough. Or if you can't name it. I can tell you what I really miss. And I'll know that I have found a way to decompress when I'm reading again. Like I feel like I have not read an actual book in so long, but I remember loving that. But right now, I actually, I think they're taking my dog for a walk because I can't get on my phone, and I can't, like, I have to just completely relinquish the world to him. So.
One of the things that I do, and I shouldn't even say it, but I got a Peloton bike because a year ago I told Makeeba that I would ride with her in March, and that was a year ago March. So I got it in January. I said, "Hey, by March I'd be ready."
Oh wait, so okay, I forgot about that.
Later, we're a year late, right? And and Makeeba just celebrated like 500 rides.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So that's one of the things I'd say you do. So I've been trying to do it because I said I wasn't ready to do it because I was trying to practice self-care and just really do something for me, get on the indoor bike and just kind of unplug, right? Unplug and just practice self-care by taking care of myself, my body, right? And so I know I owe her we were supposed to go together in March of last year, and I chickened out. I pretended like I forgot.
Okay, there's a march coming up.
Yeah. Right. That's why I said I don't know if I should say this, but that's one of the things I do. I've been trying to ride 3 days a week, just to stay as fit as possible. I guess when you go into undergraduate university back pre-pandemic days, they used to say the freshman 15. Well, I think I got the pandemic plump, so I don't know how many pounds. So I've been trying to get on that bike. I also developed a bad habit of chips and hot sauce.
That's the best.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's self-care or indulgence, but sometimes the kettle chips with some hot sauce.
Hot sauce, like the red hot.
Yeah, it feels like a meal. So maybe that's probably not self-care, probably more indulgence. But the Peloton has been how I've been trying to decompress. I don't know. I'm still ready for Makeeba though.
Yeah, you are. We're gonna do
it. Wonderful. Somebody says, ask the question, how do you bring your message of social justice to high school students, providing the brave space to unpack all of these things? So how would you bring this to younger students, high school students?
I have an opportunity to speak actually to some high school students next week, and I have to be honest with you, I think the question is reversed. I mean, young people today are so much more fearless and have much higher expectations than I ever had at that age, of me, of our community. So I really find that when I get a chance to spend some time with teenagers, they inspire me to do better, really.
Yes. Other comments?
The nonprofit I work for, Building Audacity, for context, Black-founded, Black-led nonprofit, awesome. We empower youth up to, I think, age 25 to create the change they want to see in their communities. And as Dr. McCreary was saying, youth are brilliant and really know what they're doing. But I think it also relates to the subject of just communities know the problems they face best and thus the solutions they face best. So I think the bigger issue at hand isn't like, how can we have these conversations with youth? I think that they want to have them and they're excited to, for the most part. I think it's how can we give them the resources and the leadership space and the, just the megaphones to implement what they want to see. Because when they do, the outcomes are just really incredible. I can speak at least from Building Audacity. We have youth leading art installations, and we have youth holding conferences to empower each other and share resources. It's really great.
Wonderful. Amma, anything to add? A lot of questions coming on.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. I had an opportunity. Makeeba had an opportunity to. Our sons go to the same high school, and had an opportunity to speak at their high school. One of the things I'd say, when connecting with young people, you're going to get your feelings hurt a little bit. So. So you got to have a tough chin, and also, I would say, one of the things of, in Dr. King's legacy, when he was 13 years old, King was the son of a preacher as well, right? This is intergenerational practice in their family, and so at 13, Dr. King decided that he did not want to follow the path of being a Christian minister; that he needed to do something else. and had it not been for the community of people around him to give him the space to make those decisions, to chart his own path, to find his way to his calling, we might not know the person that we are celebrating, we're honoring, we're really memorializing his legacy today. And so it feels important to me in this moment. And I oftentimes don't do a great job. I'm terrible at it with my own kids, but trying to give them the space to lead and to make some decisions around their own agency. I think to Makeeba's point, there's a lot for us in this generation and in my generation and our generation to learn from the fearlessness of young people. And so I'm excited to be in the background or being in the position of blocking and tackling for someone else's touchdown.
Thank you so much. There's another question here, which I think asks, can the panelists share how they are balancing academics, civic engagement, and their visions for a time beyond Tufts? Sort of outside of, particularly for the younger people, you're at Tufts for 4 years. How are you balancing sort of what you see beyond, and even for Dr. McCreary and all of us, beyond the moment that you're in, I guess, how do you see balancing your time after this moment? If that makes sense.
I guess I find myself always trying to do it all, but then one thing that I've learned throughout my 4 years at Tufts is it's okay to say no. Like as a freshman, it was so hard for me to say no to something because I'm like, I want to do all these things. I want to be a part of 5 clubs. I want to do so many things, but I would say the one trick that helps me to balance stuff is just, I'm going to say no. If I don't have the time for it, I'm not going to force myself. Just because I really want to do it doesn't mean I have to. I have to prioritize my mental health and also think about the fact that I may not have enough time to do an amazing job. And so I should leave that role to someone else who might have more time than I do and might do a better job because they have more time. Yeah.
I completely agree. I also think I've been thinking about how so often free labor is expected of Black women, older Black women, younger Black women, all of us. So now I'm just like, I deserve compensation and I deserve support. I deserve investment. And if it's not working to serve me, or if it's not working to serve my community, then I'm not interested. So yeah, I think putting yourself first, putting your community first, and each decision you make, perfectly valid.
Any other comments?
I would
Yes,
say
go ahead.
that, yeah, I'm going to take that one. I have gotten myself to a place where I really operate in being sort of unapologetic about what I will and will not participate in. And I think it's a privilege of probably age. But, so I actually think you should always, take as many opportunities as you can. And when I talk to young people, I talk a lot about knowing when to say no, which you both seem to be very clear about, but also understanding that you, when you say yes, it's sort of the bouncing ball that might get you to the next thing that's really going to help you catapult into your own success. But I would encourage the two of you, as soon as you possibly can, to really grind into your North Star and feel really comfortable knowing that can be your guide. And if it doesn't fit, and if it doesn't line up, and if it feels like it takes you off of your center, like those are also the moments when you say no.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to learn that.
Yeah, I guess how I would add, I'm also in school. I just passed my last comprehensive exam and moved into Canada. I'm trying to be Makeeba, so now I'm a doctoral candidate. I think for us, the Black intellectual tradition of combining activism with intellectual curiosity and stimulation and learning is a part of our DNA. And I think what happens at times, the Black intellectual tradition and our curiosity of knowledge is sometimes diminished. It means that you are less authentically Black because you are balancing the activism with the scholarship. And so, I think, don't give that up. And that rigor, that curiosity, that intellectual curiosity doesn't always have to be in the form of formalized education. It can be in other forms of learning. Makeeba talked about even reading a book and becoming a lifelong learner in ways that make sense has to be a part of your practice, even if you are not going to follow or pursue academics. I think it has to be an important piece of all of our personal growth and learning. And so, I commend the two of you I wish I was as bright as the two of you and as knowledgeable and powerful in my language as you are as undergraduate students. So I feel like we're in excellent hands.
Thank you so much. Just for all of you for being here, and thank you for the organizers. If there are any final thoughts, I mean, one of the things I was reflecting on before this program was just how much this program allows me just personally to sit and talk to people who, given the constraints of time and we're all busy and we're all burning the candle at both ends, being able to talk and kind of delve into people's stories and their activism and their intellect and their thoughts. So thank you so much for all of you for being here and for talking to all of us, particularly during a global pandemic. I always put that at the end that, people are amazingly kind of together and kind of, do these very insightful, intellectually engaging moments given the constraints that we're in. So thank you so much for coming. I think that my fearless colleagues are telling me that it's we're moving on to the next S Factor performance. But thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much for talking to us. And I'm so happy to have engaged with you.
Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me walking, marching up to freedom. Now let me tell you about a man named Moses and his battle with the Pharaoh. See, after hundreds of years in captivity, said it was time to let my people go. So he led God's people out of Egypt, led as far as the Red Sea. But then he forged on ahead, as he said, not even an ocean can stop me. And I ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody walking, marching up to freedom. Now we got a modern day Moses of Pharaoh, who let the world know about his dream of justice rolling down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. And sometimes I wonder where we'd be if we didn't stand up and say, I'm gonna march till we all get to freedom land and let nothing stand in my way. And I ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody walking, marching up to freedom. And I ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody walking, talking, keep on fighting, hoping, praying, marching up to freedom land.
Thank you S Factor. It was 2019, but it feels like it was just right outside this building. My name is Reverend Elise Nelson Winger, and I'm the University Chaplain here at Tufts. Thank you so much, panelists, for your reflections and thoughtful responses, and attendees for all of the wonderful questions and comments in the chat. When we originally envisioned this program, the Quest for the Bread of Love, we had a vision of sitting around tables, breaking bread together, and having a long, long evening of conversation. And I know you've just gotten a taste of the power of your witness and work tonight. So thank you. Thanks to President Monaco and to our campus sponsors, especially the Office of the Provost. Thank you, student musicians from S Factor and Essence, for celebrating and singing the music we know was bread of faith for the kings. You have been bread for us. Finally, thank you to all of the members of the planning team, especially Kiara Hortons, for bringing to us the sermon, A Knock at Midnight, which gave us the theme for today's celebration. The moral and social midnights of our day, as President Monaco and others detailed, are manifold. But as King proclaimed, there comes a knock at those midnights and a quest for the bread of love. And when this love is offered, it heals, it renews, it transforms. This love animates and transcends all of our religious and spiritual traditions. This love, if it is love, speaks truth, that we are inherently worthy and continuously called to live with courage and hope. Indeed, this love, King proclaimed, is the source of power for changing our world. And where do we go from here? He wrote that power at its best is love, implementing the demands of justice. And justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. This love belongs here at Tufts. Faculty, staff, students, all, we need this bread to live out the mission of creativity, innovation, and inclusion that we share. Everybody needs this bread. So I hope that amidst our own midnights, we will get knocking on the doors of our neighbors and loved ones, colleagues and mentors who we know have bread to nourish us, who will sit us down and bring us the love and care that we deserve and need. And then I hope we will stand at the thresholds of our own, our homes and offices, sacred places and community spaces, ready to open our doors when we hear that knock at midnight. We can be a community of radical care and conscience with and for each other. We are this community when we break this bread of love together. Thank you all for your presence and your love today. Our celebration now concludes with a final song by Essence entitled, I Feel.
I feel like going on. I feel like going on. Though trials come on every hand, I feel like going on. Oh, 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 I feel like pressing my way. I feel